In early March 1968, thousands of high school students in East Los Angeles made history. They put down their pencils, walked out of their classrooms, and filled the streets with signs that read "Education, not eradication." These were the East L.A. Walkouts, also known as the Blowouts, a powerful movement led mostly by Mexican American students from schools in Boyle Heights and surrounding neighborhoods. Their goal was simple but revolutionary: to demand an equal education in a system that had long treated them as second class citizens. At the heart of this movement was Sal Castro, a young Mexican American teacher at Lincoln High School who inspired students to believe that their voices mattered. He encouraged peaceful protest and helped students plan, but this story focuses on the students themselves and the collective power they created when they walked out. To understand why the students walked out, we have to look at what school was like for them before 1968. Mexican American students in East Los Angeles face a deeply unequal education system. Their schools were overcrowded, underfunded, and often ignored by the district. Counselors pushed them into low-level vocational programs that prepared them for manual labor instead of college, and teachers routinely discouraged them from pursuing higher education. Students were punished for speaking Spanish to make them feel ashamed of their culture, and rarely saw themselves reflected in textbooks or school lessons. Most teachers and administrators were white, and there were almost no Mexican American educators or counselors to support them. By the late 1960s, inspired by the wider civil rights movement, students began organizing. They held meetings, wrote underground newspapers, talked to classmates, and spread their concerns to the community. One student later recalled that in the days leading up to the protests, everyone knew it was going to happen. This comment shows how widespread the frustration was and how ready the students were to take action together. On March 5th, 1968, the first student walkout took place at Wilson High School. Soon after, hundreds of students at Roosevelt, Garfield, Lincoln, Belmont, and other schools joined in. They marched straight into the streets of East Los Angeles to make their voices heard. At Roosevelt High School, students walked out through the front gates onto Soto Street and Brooklyn Avenue, now Cesar Chavez Avenue. Others from nearby schools joined marches that led to Belverde Park, a familiar community space where students often gathered for events. These locations were chosen intentionally. They were public, visible, and deeply tied to the Chicano community. By marching through their own neighborhoods and gathering in parks, and even outside the Los Angeles School Board, students turned everyday spaces into symbols of resistance. Over the next few days, the number of students grew to nearly 15,000 across East Los Angeles. They carried handmade signs, chanted Chicano power, and listed clear demands: more Mexican American teachers and administrators, bilingual education, updated textbooks, and fair treatment in schools. One student, Luis Torres, described the incredible range of students who walked out. In his words, brainiacs, jocks, cheerleaders, nerds, and gangbangers, all marching together. This primary source tells us something essential. The walkouts were not led by one kind of student. They were a cross section of an entire community. Students from different backgrounds, friend groups, and identities found common ground in the belief that they deserved a better education. Police arrived quickly and tried to control the crowds, sometimes arresting students who refused to go back inside. Despite the tension, the walkout spread, each one more organized and determined than the last. The days after the walkouts brought a mixture of backlash and hope. Many students faced suspensions, threats from administrators, or even arrests. Some teachers lost their jobs for supporting the protest, and community members like Sal Castro were detained. Even so, the students stood strong. Their actions had made an entire city and country pay attention. Newspapers and television coverage spread the story widely, drawing attention to the discrimination Mexican American students had been facing for decades. Meetings were held between students, parents, and the school board. These conversations were often frustrating and slow, but they marked a turning point. The students finally had a voice in shaping their education. Within months, the district began reviewing curriculum, creating bilingual education pilot programs, and opening the door for Chicano studies courses in local colleges. These changes were gradual and sometimes symbolic, but they represented a shift that would grow in years to come. Most importantly, The walkouts gave students something many of them had been denied: pride. Students who had felt invisible or dismissed found confidence in their collective voice and began to see themselves as leaders. They proved that education was not just something handed down by the district, it was something they could fight for. The walkouts marked a turning point for Mexican American students in Los Angeles and across the United States. They helped spark the broader Chicano movement, which demanded equality in schools, politics, and culture. Over time, schools began to implement bilingual education programs, create Chicano studies departments, and hire more Latino teachers and administrators. Even today, many of the same issues, like representation, fairness in funding, and cultural inclusion, are still debated. But the courage of students in 1968 continues to inspire new generations. Their actions prove that when young people stand together, they can change the education system and history itself.